Thinking of moving to Cascais, Portugal? Before you pack your bags, you need to see how this coastal gem has transformed over the past 3 years. From rising property prices to a booming expat scene and new local hotspots, Cascais wasn't exactly what we remembered. Stick around to find out if it's still the idyllic spot expats fell in love with, or if the changes could change your plans, and it's time to talk if they've changed ours.
All right, so how has it changed in the past 3 years?
Well, to give you context, we did visit back in the summer of 2021. What a lovely summer that was. It was a little bit during COVID.
Right, yeah, it definitely was. Things were still coming out of it.
So in terms of tourism, that was different. There was domestic tourism going on, but in terms of like the international fever for Portugal and also just visiting an area like Cascais as maybe a day break from Lisbon, or people that like to just stay there and holiday, it was different.
Yes, that's one thing that was a big change that we noticed is there were a lot more people there this time around.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a good and a bad thing, right? So we started to see a lot more gentrification that's happened certainly in the city center, a lot more businesses, kind of younger, hipper businesses that have moved in.
Yeah, not that it needed loads. I think the city center was already pretty built up and pretty nice, not like, you know, ruins or anything around, but we see that it's just even from there gone even higher, gone to even more maybe trendier places, coffee shops and interesting stores compared to what it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, no, I think what that has brought is actually a positive in that if you're living there, it's brought options.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one thing that I noticed that changed as well is you have the city center area, which was nice, but I felt like it's kind of spread out now. So when we went 3 years ago, we didn't stay right in it, but we were pretty close and it still felt like we were a little outside of it. Whereas now I think that whole area has spread a little bit. So it's almost like it's growing, which I think is nice. So you don't have to necessarily be right down in the middle of everything to get the feel of it.
All right, now, you know me, but if you know me, I like to dig into stats and look at kind of the facts. There's not been like a major census that has come out, but I did take a look to see what the different statistics were in terms of the population shift. And there hasn't been a great population shift in the past 3 years, at least from the data that I saw. There is an uptick in terms of how many people are living there, but it's not actually been at the same level that Portugal has seen the rise. Okay. Now, why is that? Is it because the prices, like has Cascais priced out many people that would like to live there?
Maybe.
You know, but so in terms of like that change, it's not been that drastic. I think another reason for that is because of the building regulations. So it's almost like what's there is there. There are some new developments coming on, but it's not like rapid expansion, at least in like the small kind of
there's not really space
downtown
for it,
area for
right?
Cascais. Exactly.
Yeah, and probably the regulations as well. One thing that I don't remember from last time, which I don't know why I wouldn't remember this, but it felt hillier this time.
Okay.
And I think maybe because we did go out a bit more. Like last time, since we were close to the city center area, this time we were a little further out, which was nice. It's like kind of like you're out of the craziness, but not too far because it's pushed a bit closer to you. But I don't remember it being so hilly. And last time, Sia was a baby, so we had the big stroller. So you would think I would remember that, but maybe it's because we didn't push out as far. So I don't remember it being as hilly.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point. It gave us a different perspective on Cascais this visit compared to last one, and that different perspective totally changed the way we see Cascais. So it's not necessarily all the things that we saw that changed in Cascais, but our perspective changed because of where we had based ourselves. And honestly, like walking a good distance to get to that downtown area and passing by a variety of things that we missed on the first time we visited.
Last time we were here in 2021, this was the building that we had our Airbnb at. It looks exactly the same. It's a good location though. Last time we were here, we didn't catch it when stuff was actually open, so it's fun to see it buzzing. And then also there's a little coffee stall that we got coffee at.
We do need to discuss on how there are similarities between Cascais and Porto.
Okay, So similarities, I would say not much. I mean, I think they're quite different.
Oh, that's harsh. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, like Cascais has this beachy feel. The city center area is much smaller. It's more compact to a couple streets where it's colorful and there's like pedestrian only parts and, you know, restaurants, cafes and things like that. But it's very condensed. Of course, you move out a little bit and it feels a bit more livable. Like I was saying, it's stretched out. So you have those options for, you know, more apartments and different cafes and such. But it is a lot more in this one smaller area. So it's smaller in that sense. And then also, I think it gives a really beachy feel when you get down by the water area.
Okay.
I think Porto is very different. It can give you a little bit of that.
But we're not talking about how they're different. We're talking about how they're the same.
Oh, I'm saying that how they're different.
I know you are, but I'm talking about how they're the same.
Okay.
So in terms of sameness, I find that Porto has this authenticity that is Portuguese. And what is Portuguese can change depending on the region that you're in, but you still find authenticity in Cascais. And I know there have been so many people that say like it's plastic there. It's not. It's not. So. And I think part of the reason was when we were in the kind of the suburb area, having to walk to the downtown area, we passed through so much of what is like traditional Portuguese neighborhoods with traditional Portuguese restaurants and cafes, and then like sprinkled in there would be signs of gentrification maybe.
Right. So the kindness of the people, I think, is definitely the same.
Yes.
I think the Portuguese were, you know, have been very kind, and we saw that 3 years ago. We saw that the same this time around. And so the kindness of the Portuguese is something that's definitely the same. I think also you get a lot of English as well. I know that language sometimes is a concern for people when they move. You get a lot of English in Porto, cafes, restaurants, you know, just people on the streets if you need help with directions or anything. And you also get that a lot in Cascais, so I think that that is the same.
Okay, so is that where it all runs out? And now you want to talk about the differences?
And now I already jumped into the differences. We can switch over to the differences.
I mean,
sure.
I would also say similar in terms of, at least from my experience, in terms of like consumer pricing.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about like going out to a cafe or a restaurant, it felt pretty similar. All right, Sia just got a little hungry, so we popped into this cafe, and you can still find little cafes like this. You don't have to go to the fancy upmarket places, and we spent $7.20 for all the items that you saw here. Maybe like the cheap spots aren't as plentiful as what you can find in Porto.
Okay.
But if you're talking about like going to a specialty coffee cafe, a cocktail bar, a ethnic food restaurant, you know, like something that's different, those prices seem to be about the same.
And then what did you think about housing? Because I think a lot of people are worried that housing in Cascais is really expensive, but honestly, it's gotten expensive in Porto too. So which do you think is?
Well, it's different, right?
All right, Steve, let's talk about real estate. We'll talk about all over Portugal and then hone in on the Cascais area. So tell us about real estate here.
Property market's interesting. We've obviously had a number of years of pretty good growth in Portugal.
Right.
Actually, last year, it slowed down slightly. So to the end of 2023, we saw a 20% drop in volume. Okay, so that was interesting. Not necessarily prices. Knight Frank produced a report which basically says that gives a global comparison of all countries. And Portugal actually for 2023 was up 7%, which is pretty good if you think of countries like UK negative. USA negative.
Okay.
So it's pretty positive generally. It shows a lot of resilience. Lisbon was 5% growth last year. So the first quarter really it slowed down a bit, but now we're moving again.
Okay.
And Savills produced some report which actually says that 70% of all new developments have already been pre-sold. So that's pretty positive, right?
Yeah, that is. Okay, so let's chat a little bit about purchasing a property and then also renting. Let's start with purchasing. Tell us about in this Cascais Portugal area.
Yeah, so the Cascais situation is very interesting. It's a big range, okay? So I was looking this week, if we look at T2s in this area, so the central, prime, I saw something this week, 85 square meters, it was just over 1.1 million. 12,000 a square metre, that's 85 square metres, 2-bedroom, it's got a terrace, it's in the yellow zone with cafes and restaurants. If you go to T3, you're going up. So best in class again, penthouse, we're talking 160 square metres, 160 square metre terrace as well. That's 2.2 million, that's 14,000 a square metre.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And there'll be some stuff that's even more expensive than that. We go down to sort of T1s, and you could be anything between 9, 10, 11,000 quite easily for best in class.
Okay.
Now, that's best in class. That's new build. And there's no surprises really that new build is actually outperforming significantly the rest of the market. If you go back from the seafront here, coming inland a little bit towards areas like Asuncion, Parel de Rosario, Guia, you'll see prices drop quite dramatically. So there you could find T3s, T2s at sort of 5,000 a square metre.
Okay.
But of course, it's a radical different product. So you've got, you know, the old design, old layout. You've got sort of fairly narrow rooms. You've got low ceiling heights. You've got none of the amenities, none of the real show factor of the new build.
Right.
And you may be on the ground floor. You may not have a lift, so the pricing is down. But it's still relatively close to the centre here. So there's a big range.
Okay, how about those looking to rent? What can you tell us about prices for renting?
Yeah, so house prices roughly increased 40% from 2020 to end of 23, according to some research Engels and Volk has produced. Rental market, again, up about 50%. If you're renting in kind of prime Cascais, you can start around sort of, for one bed, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, sort of best in class, and you getting up to T2s, you know, your 3, 4, 5,000, and then T3s, 4, 5, 6,000. That's a very good product. If you go back inland, a bit further this time to Al Kabidesh, you know, the prices are going to come right down. So you'll be looking at a one bed for 1,000, 2 beds for 1,500, 3 beds for sort of 2,000 to 3,000. So again, you just see this really big differential. The product is very different. The issue with perhaps living as far back as Al Kabidesh is, you know, you're not near a train.
Yeah.
So you need a bus to get to the train, or you need a car.
Okay.
And then you've got places like Pered and Carcavelos, which is still the kind of the borough of Cascais, which are very popular. And rentals there starting at around, for a T1, 1,000 to sort of 2,750. Then T2, 1,500 to 3,000. T3, sort of 2.5 to 4.5.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve. And if you would like to get in touch with Steve, then you can email me at info@expatseverywhere.com. If you want to find a similarity in like the feel of the beachiness, if you're in Foz in Porto, then you're going to get that beachy feel, or maybe up Matosinhos.
I was going to say Matosinhos isn't Porto, but it's close.
Yeah. So
and the way it's laid out it's similar. It has similar vibes to the historic city center of Cascais.
Right. So if we're going with same, I would say like Foz or and a little further north of Matosinhos for that beachy feel of Cascais. But when I went through the whole like it's different, it's because when you're in the center of Porto,
we can jump to the differences.
Yeah, it is a city. Like so it feels like a city. It's a little grittier, people will say. You've got graffiti, you've got like darker concrete that they use up here in the north, whereas things are a bit lighter and brighter further south. So I think that this is where I view them as very different.
Yeah, they both have calçadas. But
yes, always watch out for those. It rains in both.
Yeah, that's the tiles. It rains less, I think, in Cascais.
Although it is quite windy. I think something that catches people off guard is because of its location. A difference is it is very windy, different than here.
Yeah.
What is it like being back at Casa de Guia?
Yeah, I remember this area. I mean, it seems exactly the same. I can remember where we sat when we had a snack before, and the view's amazing. It's a really, really beautiful blue water view. So it feels exactly how it was 3 years ago.
If you are living coastal in Porto, it can still be windy, but yeah, you're right. Okay, that's interesting that you bring up that. I think that another difference is that Porto has essentially 2 downtowns. You have the historic city center, and then you have the business downtown. Right. You don't have that in Cascais. Right. You don't see that like developed kind of business hub area, because that's not what the town was when it was founded.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't meant for that. I think it was meant to be a coastal city that was for vacations and for relaxing and stuff. So not business. So they've kept with that. Yeah, and many people from Lisbon in the past and still today take their vacation there. Yeah. So they don't do that in Porto. I think one big difference is connectivity. to get from Cascais to Lisbon, if we're talking about not having a car, but even with a car, you've got the traffic, but just getting to the airport, let's say in Lisbon, it's far from Cascais, whereas in Porto, it's connected better. It's got buses, metro. I know Cascais has buses, but Porto has a metro, and then also it's close to a major airport.
Yeah, it's not far, I'll say that, from Cascais to the airport. And then also Lisbon has better connectivity in terms of the airport, has better connectivity to other parts of Europe and North America as well.
But if you're living in Porto, you're obviously closer to the Porto airport than if you're living in Cascais to the Lisbon one. Now, the good thing too is if you don't have a car, ride shares are still very affordable in both. One difference would be I think it's a little cheaper in Porto than it is in Lisbon region. The ride shares.
Okay. Yeah. I would say also your ability to get a car is much better in Porto than in Cascais.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Like, would you say that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, certainly where we were, and then even when we were in the downtown area trying to get a car to get out, it just seemed like the cars had to navigate one way.
It was tricky.
Yeah. Like you could see them on the map just like circling your area until, they finally wound and were able to pick you up.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think we have that problem. Roads are cleaner there.
Clean,
I don't mean like, clean also like swept better, but I mean clean in terms of like less traffic.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about like potholes and stuff. Except it gets pretty dense with traffic when you get to the downtown because there are roads that cars can't go on.
Yeah.
So that always creates like not confusion, but just like trying to get out of there and stuff.
But I think Porto has the same problem in the tourist center.
In the downtown, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like if you're trying to get picked up in some random area that is like right off of one street that is a pedestrian only street,
it could be tricky.
Yeah, it cuts off traffic and it's just hard.
Right.
It's harder for cars.
And then one ways and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to go back to a similarity. I found a lot of the same shops in both places.
Yeah.
So if you have a favorite grocery store, you can find that in both. The grocery stores are of similar sizes. You have the same, not restaurants, but chain restaurants. Mm-hmm. You can find both of those. Both are quite commercial. Porto probably does a little bit better job of having more small business options.
Okay.
Especially like newer small business options that are trendy.
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. Another like kind of sign of gentrification. When I use the word gentrification, I don't mean it in a negative way.
Right. Yeah.
I think some people hear that and they're like,
I think it's bad.
Yeah, nails across the chalkboard.
Yeah, no, but you're just talking about like the renovating. Yeah. One thing also too, you're talking about the small businesses, but also Porto just has more options for like bigger malls and that type of like bigger stores. Yeah. So like if you're thinking of a big store that you need to go to because of space and location, I think that they offer that as well. Whereas you can't really get that in Cascais, you got to go further out. So it's a little more accessible for the big stores and the big malls and stuff in Porto.
Yeah, both of them have seen a similar rise in cost of living. We know that through talking to people. We know that through, like in the past, looking at the statistics, and they've both seen a rise. So they're both like more expensive than the past 3 years. Yeah. So that has kind of been a global theme in a lot of places, certainly in most popular places in Europe. And I would say that Porto's a popular place for sure. Cascais is a popular place as well. There's more ability to expand in Porto than there is in Cascais. So we've now kind of, gone through that type of stuff, and we need to answer if we would live in Cascais.
Yeah, and this is always something that we ask ourselves when we travel and
we
new
did
places.
When we were there.
Yeah,
Again.
We always think, could we live here? And we did talk about that, like, could we live here? And honestly, yes, Cascais is
I forgot
so
how nice it was. I forgot how nice it was.
They just do things really well. Again, like the people are kind, the options are nice, it's easy to walk, you've got good weather, you've got the water, you've got a little bit of a city feel. It is a nice place to live. So I would easily say I could live there.
Yeah, I mean, we have not experienced the wicked heat that is like Lisbon and South in a while.
Yeah, or like a heat wave as well.
Heat wave in a while. Mm-hmm. Porto doesn't get that. But Porto will get on the chillier side, whereas, looking at kind of annual temperatures, Cascais doesn't get that.
Right.
Really the only weather thing is the wind.
Yeah,
that's the only kind of negative weather thing which might put you off of Cascais versus Porto. So feeling it almost felt like when we were there, it was almost like being on a resort.
Yeah, it's true.
We were still like doing work stuff while there.
And we
online.
weren't staying right down in the middle area. We were on the outer part where there are a lot more apartment buildings, and like we met a lot of people who, locals, like Portuguese who live there, but then also expats who live out in that area too. Some had cars, some didn't. So it felt a bit more livable than, you know, so I think if we did live there, I'd want to be close to this center area to easily walk there, but I wouldn't want to be in it. It'd be nice to be a bit outside of it.
It's pretty wild. It is 10:05 in the morning on a really nice summer morning, and I'm the only person here. Incredible views. Cascais. It's nice.
And as far as like people trying to say like it's flooded with Americans, I mean, maybe more American tourists, but it's not as if like Americans have flooded Cascais in droves, because I think we would have, one, noticed that, but we would have felt it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, we got recognized a few times walking down the street. I mean, in Porto, that happens as well. Like
Right.
to the same, it was like to the same degree or same level,
Right.
which kind of caught us off guard. It was nice. We love it when people come up and say hello. So we appreciate that. If you came up and said hello, thank you.
But like that too, I heard a lot of different languages.
A lot.
And that's happening a lot more in Porto now as well.
Yeah.
You walk and you're hearing German and French and English and Portuguese, of course. So like that didn't happen in Porto 3 years ago, I would say.
No.
You would mainly hear Portuguese and Spanish.
Spanish.
But
French.
now, yeah, it's a lot more of a mix. And so I felt like in Cascais, I felt that mix as well,
Yeah.
all the different languages. So that's
As much, if
the
not
same.
more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I haven't answered the question if I would live there 100%. If you couldn't tell when I was gushing about it's like a
Resort.
resort. But no, oh man, it feels so nice there. Like, it feels so nice there. So are we going to leave Porto for Cascais?
Well, we love Portugal and we're here for a bit, but there is something that is so special in our hearts about Porto that even going to Cascais, and we were like, yes, we could of course live here. It'd be easy, it'd be fun, it'd be nice, and a little tempting. It could be a bit of a change, but something has still drawn us and kept us in Porto. So for me, I would say right now, I would not leave Porto for Cascais.
Okay, I agree with that. I think we have...
Are you leaving without me?
we have put roots down here, so that's also a factor. But if we're not taking that into consideration, there is something about this city which appeals. Maybe it's the football club. Maybe it's FC Porto.
That's what's keeping you here.
No, I mean, honestly though, it is a thing for sure. Like, I do enjoy living in a city where there is a major football team that actually like wins stuff, and I get to see in the top competitions playing top teams. Although we're not in the top competition right now.
Second one.
Yeah,
Next year.
there's always next year. But no, but playing top matches. Cascais, you don't have that. You would have to travel into Lisbon to see one of the good teams.
We wouldn't do.
No, we wouldn't.
to see
to
see those teams.
No, I wouldn't travel on a monthly basis to go like for that.
Yeah.
But there is something to this city, and the people are great, and that's just it.
So there you go. We're staying in Porto.
We're staying in Porto for now.
For now. Well, that's how we feel, but don't just take our word for it. Check out Kathy's journey to see if retiring in Cascais on a lower fixed income is really doable, or watch Nicole's story about taking the leap to start her own business here. Find out if Cascais could be the right move for you too. Now, let's get moving.